The alarm rings at 6, your shoes sit by the door, you promised this year would be different. By January 17th, those shoes gather dust, and you're doom scrolling in bed. You feel sick, you call yourself lazy, you label yourself weak. If you skip this, you will spend the next 10 years punishing yourself for a biological glitch you do not understand. Stop. Your brain is not broken. It is functioning flawlessly. When you set a massive goal, you think you're improving your life. But your amygdala, the primitive survival center in your skull, perceives that sudden ambition as a dangerous drain on caloric reserves. It sees your new habit exactly like a winter famine. It actively pulls the plug on your prefrontal cortex to save your life. You're not losing to laziness. You're losing a chemical war against your DNA. You're experiencing a thermodynamic shutdown. But the protocol your body uses to protect you is the exact mechanism destroying your modern life. Let us open the neurological hood and see why your willpower never stood a chance. The motivational industry has force-fed you a very specific and highly profitable lie for decades. They tell you that discipline is a muscle that must be torn to grow. They sell you expensive leather-bound planners, complex 5-step morning routines, and stoic quotes about aggressively conquering your inner weakness. You're constantly instructed to wake up at 5 in the morning, take freezing cold showers, and push through the pain barrier. If you inevitably fail to maintain this robotic consistency, the societal verdict is simple and ruthless. You just did not want it badly enough. You lack grit. You're fundamentally flawed. So you try harder to fix yourself. You clench your jaw. You grip the steering wheel. You force a smile, and you violently override your own exhaustion just to meet an artificial and unforgiving standard of modern productivity. Stop. That is the most destructive biochemical hoax of the 21st century. Forcing discipline through sheer conscious willpower does not build a stronger, more resilient character. It builds a highly toxic and corrosive cortisol reservoir inside your skull. When you use your prefrontal cortex to wage a relentless war against your own autonomic nervous system, you're not exercising a psychological muscle. You are literally triggering a localized autoimmune response. Your deeply ancient biology perceives this forced, aggressive self-improvement as a hostile foreign invader attacking your vital energy reserves. Every single time you grit your teeth to brutally push through a new habit that your amygdala has already flagged as a severe caloric threat, you're not making actual progress. You are actively flooding your hippocampus with a massive surge of stress hormones. It is a slow, acidic bath that erodes your cognitive foundations. This culture of toxic productivity aggressively demands that you ignore your most critical physiological warning signals and treat your fragile body like a disposable rental car. But your cellular biology does not care about your perfectly curated vision board. It only cares about strict metabolic equilibrium. The suffocating guilt you feel right now is entirely manufactured by an industry that directly profits from your endless, agonizing cycles of inadequacy. You are not weak. You are not lazy, and you're certainly not undisciplined. You're simply a collateral victim of a motivational framework that completely and intentionally ignores microscopic cellular mechanics. They deliberately sold you a psychological instruction manual for a robotic machine you do not even possess. You have spent your entire adult life attempting to run high-performance capitalist software on a vulnerable nervous system designed strictly for prehistoric energy conservation. The agonizing friction you feel is a physical law, not a personal failure. But the silent horror does not stop at simple emotional exhaustion or a ruined daily planner. The self-help gurus relentlessly told you to push through the biological resistance. They just conveniently forgot to tell you what actually happens to your physical neural architecture when you successfully force your body to ignore its own survival instincts. Let us bypass all the superficial psychological theories and zoom directly into your blood-brain barrier to closely observe the microscopic wreckage. Look closely at the exact millisecond you decide to skip the workout, ignore the diet, or abandon that complex new project. You think it is a conscious choice? It is not. Your fragile ego has already been completely bypassed. Let us strip away all the comforting psychological illusions and observe the brutal neurochemical reality happening inside your skull. You sit down, you look at the schedule, you feel a sudden crushing wave of exhaustion. Your chest tightens. Your breathing becomes shallow. That is not laziness. That is a measurable physiological event called a neurometabolic lockdown. To understand this terrifying override, you must look directly at your prefrontal cortex. This is the highly advanced structural hub located just behind your forehead, responsible for willpower, long-term planning, and executing complex new behaviors. But there's a fatal design flaw hidden in this evolutionary marvel. The prefrontal cortex is an absolute, uncompromising energy glutton. It consumes massive amounts of glucose and adenosine triphosphate, or ATP, just to force a single new neural pathway to fire. When you attempt to build a rigorous new habit, you're essentially trying to lay down a completely new biological highway through a dense, highly resistant jungle of established synaptic connections. The very moment you initiate this demanding process, your amygdala acts as a strict and paranoid cellular accountant. It instantly scans the sudden spike in cerebral energy consumption. It mathematically calculates that maintaining this new difficult habit will severely drain your vital caloric reserves. In the unforgiving laws of biology, an unpredictable loss of energy is a direct threat to your existence. Therefore, the amygdala initiates a ruthless chemical coup. It releases an immediate flood of stress hormones that actively sever the neural connections to your prefrontal cortex. The oxygenated blood flow is literally diverted away from your center of logic and willpower, violently pushing it downward toward your primitive survival centers. Your cognitive bandwidth plummets. Your peripheral vision narrows. Your motivation evaporates into thin air. Stop. Do not judge this mechanical process. This is the exact moment you receive your absolute biological amnesty. You must realize that your failure to maintain strict discipline is not a reflection of your moral character. It is a mathematical certainty dictated entirely by cellular thermodynamics. Your brain is not weak, flawed, or broken. It is operating with terrifying, flawless efficiency. It is successfully protecting you from what it genuinely perceives as an acute metabolic crisis. Every single time you give up on a massive goal, your biological machinery is actually celebrating a triumphant survival victory behind the scenes. You are fighting a hopeless war against an autonomic system that has been perfectly programmed to conserve energy at all costs. But this revelation raises a much darker and more disturbing question. Why is this brilliant piece of biological engineering so profoundly mismatched with the reality of your current life? Why does a system designed exclusively to keep you alive act like a silent saboteur, actively destroying your future? To find the true architect of this invisible prison, we cannot just look at your present neurochemistry. We must pull the microscopic camera back through the fossil record and descend into the deep, unforgiving history of our ancient species. To truly understand the terrifying magnitude of this internal conflict, we must completely abandon the suffocating confines of your modern bedroom and forcefully drag the camera back through 200,000 years of brutal human history. We are leaving the era of synthetic productivity and plunging directly into the merciless grip of the Pleistocene epoch. Imagine the freezing, unforgiving landscape of the last ice age, where caloric scarcity was the absolute, undeniable law of existence. During those hundreds of millennia of agonizing famine and relentless winter, the greatest threat to a human being was not a lack of ambition, but rather a reckless expenditure of vital energy. If one of your ancient ancestors suddenly decided to aggressively burn their limited caloric reserves on a completely unnecessary physical or mental project, they would not become a highly successful visionary. They would simply freeze to death and be rapidly erased from the evolutionary gene pool. The individuals who actually survived the crushing brutality of the prehistoric world were the ones whose nervous systems were flawlessly programmed to hoard energy to resist unnecessary movement, and to immediately shut down any biological process that did not directly contribute to immediate survival. You must realize that you are the direct genetic descendant of those master energy conservers. Your DNA is a brilliantly successful artifact of metabolic laziness, forged in the fires of extreme environmental deprivation. Now, brutally rip that perfectly adapted ancient creature out of the freezing tundra and violently drop it into the hyper-accelerated, relentless machinery of the 21st century capitalist landscape. We have artificially constructed an incredibly toxic modern environment where calories are violently abundant, but the societal demands on your cognitive bandwidth are infinitely compounding. You are aggressively bombarded by an unrelenting stream of artificial deadlines, synthetic productivity metrics, and the suffocating cultural expectation that you must constantly optimize every single waking second of your fragile existence. But your ancient biological hardware is completely, utterly blind to your modern ambitions. Your primitive operating system cannot read a motivational quote. It cannot comprehend a financial spreadsheet, and it absolutely does not care about your carefully structured 5-year plan. When society demands that you wake up at 5 in the morning to relentlessly hustle for a promotion, your deeply embedded genetic code only senses a terrifying, life-threatening depletion of vital energy reserves. The agonizing friction you experience every single time you attempt to build a rigorous new habit is not a simple psychological hurdle or a pathetic lack of willpower. You are literally feeling the crushing continental collision between two entirely incompatible eras of human existence. You are violently forcing a traumatized, famine-adapted, prehistoric nervous system to endlessly sprint on an artificial, electrified treadmill designed by modern corporations to extract your maximum labor. Every time you fail to maintain your newly established discipline, you're not committing a moral crime against your own potential. You are simply witnessing the flawless execution of a deeply ancient survival protocol that successfully kept your ancestors alive through the harshest conditions on this planet. You are a tragic victim of a profound evolutionary mismatch, desperately fighting a hopeless war against a 200,000-year-old biological ghost that genuinely believes it is saving your life from imminent starvation. The crushing weight of your repeated failures is nothing more than the heavy, undeniable tax of existing in a synthetic environment that actively despises your natural physiology. But now, as the deafening noise of human history slowly fades away, we must completely halt this sweeping macro-analysis, put the evolutionary timeline down, stop looking at the fossil record, return to the absolute, terrifying silence of your own breathing in this exact moment. Now let the deafening noise of deep human history slowly fade away into the background. Put the evolutionary timeline down. Stop looking at the fossil record and the relentless demands of the modern capitalist machine. Return your focus entirely to the absolute, terrifying silence of your own breathing in this exact moment. Look at the room around you. Notice the stillness of the air, the quiet hum of your appliances, the heavy weight of your own shoulders. For decades, you have been carrying the crushing burden of a toxic, manufactured illusion. You are aggressively conditioned to believe that your worth as a human being is strictly measured by your relentless productivity, your flawless discipline, and your ability to constantly optimize every single waking hour. But right now, in this quiet space, I'm giving you the absolute biological permission to stop trying to fix yourself. You do not need to be repaired because you are not broken. You never were. I want you to look at those dusty running shoes by the door, or that abandoned planner on your desk, not as monuments of your personal failure, but as profound evidence of your body actively fighting to keep you alive. Your nervous system saw a threat, and it threw itself in front of the bullet to protect your vital energy. That is not laziness, that is the ultimate unconditional love of your own cellular biology. It is time to officially resign from the exhausting, impossible standard of modern perfection. You are hereby granted the existential license to simply collapse when you are completely out of bandwidth. When you lie in bed staring at the ceiling, feeling entirely paralyzed by the crushing weight of your responsibilities, realize that this paralysis is a sacred, necessary state of deep biological recovery. You are allowed to be incredibly messy. You're allowed to leave goals unfinished. You're allowed to be a beautifully flawed, heavily scarred, and deeply exhausted human being trying to navigate an intensely hostile environment. The profound friction you feel every day is the undeniable proof that you're still a living, breathing organism, not a synchronized, unfeeling machine. The universe does not require your constant optimization to validate your existence, your mere survival. The simple act of maintaining your core body temperature at 37 degrees Celsius in a cold and indifferent world is already a staggering evolutionary triumph. Let that heavy, suffocating lead vest of guilt finally slide off your shoulders and crash onto the floor. You have survived your own biology today, and that is more than enough. But as you sit in this newfound quiet peace, a much darker realization begins to slowly cast a shadow over the room. If your brain's energy conservation system is this predictable, this mechanical, and this deeply vulnerable to exploitation, who else holds the master blueprint to this ancient survival code? You might have forgiven your own body, but what if there are invisible architects actively weaponizing this exact biological glitch against you right now? You have forgiven your body for its desperate attempts to conserve energy. That brings a quiet, necessary peace to your bedroom tonight. But outside these walls, that exact biological predictability is actively being weaponized against you. While you were busy fighting your own guilt, an entire industry mapped out the exact caloric vulnerabilities of your amygdala. They know your brain is hardwired to seek the path of least resistance and immediate dopamine rewards to survive the harsh prehistoric winters. They did not try to fix your evolutionary glitch. They monetized it. You are now standing at a crucial existential intersection. You can use this newfound biological awareness to finally forgive yourself and slowly rebuild your defensive boundaries. Or you can remain a passive, predictable host, allowing external architects to harvest your cognitive bandwidth while you're too exhausted to resist. Are you willing to continue paying the heavy tax of your own attention? Or will you start defending your internal ecosystem? State your choice in the comments below. Because your self-forgiveness today is only the first step of a much darker awakening. The crushing friction you feel when trying to build a new habit is completely natural. But the terrifying ease you feel when scrolling through endless feeds, buying things you do not need, and clicking colorful notifications is entirely synthetic. There are engineers who use your 200,000-year-old survival instincts as a literal blueprint to design manipulative digital architectures. How exactly are these invisible corporate systems hijacking your nervous system to exploit your daily decisions? I will deconstruct that brutal matrix for you in the next video.